So this is the EasySMX X05 Pro. It did get released recently and it is in the hands of quite a few people out there. Now, at the current stage, there is a bug, which I'll just cover straight away because it's kind of an important bug as well, that other people have mentioned, and I noticed it myself as well, where if on the stock firmware, there isn't a new firmware publicly available, I'll more on that a bit later, but on the stock firmware, if you pull any of the triggers 3 times in a row, like even a short distance, like that much, it will activate hair trigger. So each trigger, when it activates that hair trigger, it will be 100% regardless of how much you actuate either trigger. Now, in order to reset that and it goes back to analog mode, you have to just let go for a few seconds and then normal mode will resume. But when you first pull it in normal analog mode, it will just briefly activate hair trigger 100% and then realize, oh, I'm back in analog mode, and then just resume analog mode until the next time you press the trigger in 3 times a short distance. So if you're playing driving games or if you're playing GTA or whatever and you want to brake shortly, it's like a small actuation, the braking instead of going all out, do that 3 times in a row and you will see hair trigger 100% get activated. So I spoke to EasySMX about this and they spent a bit of time going back and forth with the development team. They implemented a beta firmware, which I have got installed on this at the moment. And what they've done is not completely fix the issue. They actually increased the actuation count from 3 to 5. So pressing it 5 times in a row now actuates hair trigger. Now, I don't think this is going to be an issue that can be totally fixed because of the way hair trigger has been engineered on this controller. So it does have lockout for a physical type of hair trigger, but it's not pure hair trigger mode like analog switch like on the games G07 Pro and Cyclones and so on. But back onto the X05 Pro, it doesn't use proper hair triggers on the lockout. So if I lock these out at the moment, you can see there's no switch. It just goes a certain amount and then it locks out because there's a plastic, I guess there's a stopper there to sort of actuate that. And this is what recognizes the hair trigger mode. So when that's activated, it initiates digital hair trigger mode. So it only goes that much, but there's no physical switch under here. So if I just actuate it next to that microphone there, it's not a switch, it is just going to a stopper and that is it. And then when you flick it back, you do need to use another thumb because it is quite tedious to flick it back. And now we're back in normal mode. So it's worth keeping that in mind because depending on the games you play, you may experience this issue often. Now, I'm currently playing GTA 5 Enhanced and I notice it a lot, especially when driving, when you're just braking a little bit, like 3 times in a row or 5 times in a row, it will just activate hair trigger mode. But other games I've not had an issue with. Shooters, third-person adventure games, that sort of thing, no issues whatsoever. And that is really the only complaint I have about this controller because everything else, including the sticks, Hall effects, are really good. And I'll talk about those as well in a moment. But the highlight for me is the D-pad. This is just excellent. It doesn't use micro switches or tactile or anything like that. It is some kind of, well, it is tactile, but it's very silent. So if I get the microphone close to this, let's put it on top of there. Now take a listen to this. It's just really good and it doesn't wobble or it doesn't wiggle. If I get the G7 Pro, even with the G7 faceplate on, so you've got the cross type faceplate on here, there's still a lot of play. It's a great D-pad, don't get me wrong, with micro mechanical switches, but it does wobble, whereas the X05 Pro doesn't wobble. It's just pure directional. The other buttons are membrane, but they are long travel membrane, so you do require a bit more force than, say, the optical switches on the G7 Pro, which are really easy to press and you get a satisfying noise, and you do need to purposefully press them to actuate them, so there's no accidental, whereas sometimes on the G7 SE Pro, you can accidentally press a button just because they are a very light touch. But they do feel good, so these are really good for fighting games, whereas these are going to be really good for everything else. Now, I haven't played many fighting games with the X05 Pro, I just played third person in GTA 5, but it is really decent. The other face buttons are membrane, So there's nothing new here. I am using just the, I think it's the TP-Link UV500, which supports up to 1000 hertz polling rates. On the X Gaming Phantom, that does 750 odd hertz on the same dongle. So Bluetooth can be really good for games controllers on PC. You just need the right dongle for it and the right controller as well. So it's nice to see that this isn't just locked at 125 hertz or 90 hertz or 75 hertz like some other controllers are, that it does actually go above 200 hertz. 207 hertz is what I registered in some of the testing apps that I have initially tried this controller on. There is a Nintendo Switch mode, so you've got those additional buttons there should you wish to use them. In PC mode and Xbox mode, you can remap them to existing buttons on the controller. So you can't do G7 Pro style remapping to keyboard buttons or other mouse actions or anything like that. It is just remappable to existing buttons that are already on the controller. So it's worth keeping that in mind. And obviously on the back, we don't have any paddles or anything like that. You just got your toggle switch to go from USB mode to wireless dongle mode to switch mode. And then there are pogo pins for a dock. I haven't seen EasySMX advertise a suitable dock for this yet, so I guess that might be something that gets released in the future. And the grips on the underside are rubber coated. These feel really good. So very similar to the G7 Pro, the silicone or the rubber underneath is of a very similar nature or material. And it feels great. It's really comfortable in hands, it's really curvy. So I've got no issues with the materials used here. And it feels sturdy as well. The top faceplate is very nice. It's non-removable, it is fixed, but it does feel very good. And it's got this speckled effect to it. Just zoom in so you can see. And the RGB lighting is not fully customizable, but you can adjust things like brightness and the modes and so on. There's button combos to do that. The stick caps are silicone. They are decent quality silicone as well, very similar to the stock GameSir ones. Obviously I've got the caps on there. It just makes it feel lighter. And they are standard size as well, so you could use the G7 or the GameSir stick caps, which I highly recommend because it just makes sticks feel way nicer on here as well. But even without them, it's very good. You do have anti-friction rings on each stick, so that's quite cool. And the tension of the sticks, very nice. It feels just like the GameSirs do, so no difference there. It's nice to see EasySMX following that trend as well. The home button is obviously up there, and then you've got your M button for settings, configurations and stuff like that. And that's about it. There's no headphone jack or anything like that. So it's very simple, very what you see is what you get. And as I say, it feels great in the hand. So I'm just going to launch up two apps, Stick Analyzer and Joystick Tester, and just show you what it's like in actual measurements. Okay, so we've just got that. So just going to wiggle the stick to get it registered. And there we have 196 hertz. So yeah, 200 hertz. And we've got an error rate of 1.2% and a drift of 0%. So there is drift processing or anti-drift processing on there, but it isn't doing any stick filtering on debounce or quick return bounce back or anything like that, which is really cool. So you can see there, if I just zoom in, that it is overshooting. So it is very, very reactive, which is nice to see. Other controllers by default, when you have inner dead zones and things enabled, like the G7 Pro, unless you set their stick dead zone to 0%, then the return is directly to the center on bounce back. So setting it to 0% allows it to bounce and overshoot, which is exactly what you want because the stick response is then instantaneous, which is great to see. The circularity is obviously proper circles, not the raw square sensor sizing. So that's fine. Most games work perfectly fine this way. And because we haven't got any inner dead zone filtering or anything like that, you've got no issues with that at all. So I'm really happy with the stick performance on the X05 Pro out of the box. I didn't need to tweak anything or change anything. Whereas with the G7 Pro, you do need to get GameSir Nexus software to tweak those settings to get it just right how you want it. And once it's done, that's it. You don't need to use that once to get that. But yeah, really happy with that. There's no drift, obviously. It's Hall effects. and it is being filtered there. So that's fine. As long as the performance and there's no debounce or processing or anything like that, we're on a good roll. So I'm happy with that. I can close that down. Now let's do stick analyzer and just see what that tells us. And we're going to do the left stick. Doesn't really matter which one you pick. And we'll just circle those a few times. And what we're going to do is okay, so that does look like it's a bit all over the place, but that's by design. I wanted to showcase just how much of the finger move or the stick movement it registers, because the closer it is, if it's a straight line following the diagonal, then that means there's processing involved, and that's not what we want to see, because stick won't feel natural that way. You want the stick resolution and the movement of the stick to register all the subtle movements of your thumbs, and that's what we're getting here, which is great. This is what we see in other controllers as well, so it's really nice to see that. The stick resolution is the interesting part. So we've got just over 200 points on resolution. Now in wired mode, 1000 Hertz, this is obviously in Bluetooth mode I'm doing this, it registered under 150 for the resolution. So that's quite interesting. I would have expected the wired mode to be at least the same, if not better, than Bluetooth mode. So somehow in Bluetooth, it is registering a higher stick resolution than in Bluetooth in wired mode. So if I just move this window up a bit, you can see there, stick resolution 202, step resolution is quite fine anyway, so that's really good. So that's, yeah, very good results really on Bluetooth. So effectively what this is telling me is I could use this in Bluetooth and not have any negative effects. So that's kind of cool to see. So far measurements very good. So as far as I can see, EasySMX has used all of the feedback from their previous controllers, X05 and X10 and so on, and incorporated all of those improvements into here, just not on the triggers for hair trigger mode. So I have asked them to maybe implement in the release firmware, instead of having this 5 short actuations, which then initiates hair trigger mode for a short while, have the option of enabling it and disabling it for the users who want it. So if you hold down, I don't know, the settings button and something else, a button combo, that turns that hair trigger detection mode on. Otherwise it's off by default. So if you want to use that feature, you can turn it on. Otherwise the triggers just operate in analog mode, and then when this is activated, then it just activates hair trigger mode. So yeah, basically give people the option rather than enforcing 5 trigger mode actuations before hair trigger gets activated. But yeah, I think that about covers everything to do with this controller. It does come with a USB stick. It does USB cable. Sorry, it does come with a 2.4 gigahertz dongle as well. Now I'm not using the dongle at the moment because I tend to test everything by wired. The dongle is also 1000 Hertz, so just like the G7 Pro, I have done some brief testing with the dongle, and it is just as good, so as wired. So yeah, it's really personal preference on what you prefer to using, but I tend to test nowadays with Bluetooth, especially now that I've got the high performing dongle, and it's nice to know what controllers support via Bluetooth, and X05 Pro seems to do a really good job compared to a lot of other controllers, including JGameSir, which is locked at 125 Hertz over Bluetooth, whereas this is just over 200 best case scenario. So yeah, this is a really affordable and a really good controller for those on a budget, as long as you can put up with the initial 5 actuations for hair trigger mode. It might not affect you for the games you play, but for some games it will be an issue. It's just worth keeping that in mind. But for the price, I don't think you can go wrong really, and EasySMX may well fix it and give you the option via a future firmware update. So for the D-pad alone and how it feels and the stick performance and the buttons, I think it's well worth it. And just to show you the trigger buttons, the shoulder buttons, they are just tactile membrane, whereas the additional buttons are more of a tactile clicky. So these aren't membrane, they're just tactile clicky. The shoulder buttons, these are just normal membrane. But yeah, that is the X05 Pro from EasySMX.